Well, 9/11 is back in the news tonight. We have the Senate passing a bill that would allow 9/11 victims to sue Saudi Arabia. And of course, last night we talked about a billionaire who said he's going to buy a building and a 747 and fly it into the building so we can put all the conspiracy theories to rest once and for all. Well, you know what? If he gets another building that isn't hit by the plane, a steel skyscraper, to fall down right in its footprint, like they did on 9/11 Building 7, then we can say the conspiracy theory of the government, the officials' conspiracy theory, is true. But of course, part of that official conspiracy theory is the missing 28 pages that implicates the Saudis in 9/11. That would expose them to some liability issues, and the Senate has now passed a bill that would allow victims to get compensation for that. Now, it's interesting to see the reaction of various senators, especially the reaction of House Leader Paul Ryan. He says, I think we need to look at it. I think we need to review it to make sure that we're not making mistakes with our allies, that we're not catching people in this who shouldn't be caught up in this. Oh, is that why they redacted those pages? Now, you see, Paul Ryan, like Hillary Clinton, is tied to the Saudis. And just like President Obama, he bows and scrapes to them. Now, same time, Speaker Ryan is telling us that voters are right to trust Donald Trump more than him, and I would agree with that. He says, don't get into the habit of thinking that I'm going to comment on what's up and what's down, what article is here, what article is there. I'm focused on policies and principles and unifying our party. Yeah, he wants to unify the party. That's why he put himself out there and says, well, I don't think I can support Donald Trump just yet. I think he's going to have to come around a little bit. I want you all to understand that I am king of the opposition. You know, it was 4 years ago when he was Mitt Romney's running mate, and it's time for us to go back and look at some of these things now. In the Atlantic and the Washington Post, many articles were coming out, mainstream media, talking about how it had surfaced that in high school, he was voted the biggest brown noser. And you can see that clip right there. He was also the prom king. Things really don't change much, do they? He's still the biggest brown noser, and he still thinks that he's king of the prom. That's why he blasts Donald Trump. Remember, he said that the proposed ban on Muslims entering the country was unconstitutional. Please explain to us where in the Constitution it says that there is a right to immigrate. There's a lot of rights that they trample on a regular basis, but there is no right of immigration in the Constitution. Let's take a look at this government that he doesn't want to criticize, our allies, or as maybe we should call them, his donors, just like Hillary Clinton does. We're going to take a look at a video here in just a moment, put on national TV in Saudi Arabia by the Saudi government on how to beat your wife. But before we look at that video, I want to read to you an account that surfaced today from The Guardian, a woman who watched the Saudis beat her husband. Why would they beat her husband? Well, he was convicted of insulting Islam through electronic channels. He had a blog that was critical of the Saudis, a blog that was critical perhaps of the Islam religion, which they don't tolerate. And so he was sentenced to 10 years in prison, 1,000 lashes. And in this very touching story here, she says she talked to him on the phone and she fled. She got out of the country, went to Canada, so they've talked on the phone. She calls him up and he says, I need to tell you something. Will you promise me you'll be brave and not tell the children? He said, tomorrow they're going to start enforcing my sentence of 1,000 lashes. He said, one of the prison warders told me, he said, it's going to take a moment to understand what he was telling me. She said, yes, the first 50 lashes, I'll get them in front of the big mosque in Jeddah. She says, I simply couldn't imagine the authorities going ahead with it. She said, I struggled to talk to him. I said, that's impossible. And he said, no, it's going to happen. So what she does is she tells her children they're going to have a few media-free days because she doesn't want them to see this. Basically, they're going to beat him to within an inch of his life if they don't beat him to death. It's incredibly brutal, the process. She talks about it. She says, finally, she got the courage to watch it. All of her friends were talking about it. It was showing up on Facebook. She gets the courage to look at it. She said, as the guy who was going to do the beating came out, she said, the man himself couldn't be made out in the video, but I saw clearly that he was striking Raif with all of his might. That's her husband. She said, my husband's head was bowed. In the very quick succession, he took blows all over the back of his body. He was lashed from his shoulders to his calves, while the men around him clapped and uttered pious phrases. It was too much for me. It's indescribable watching something like that being done to the person you love. She said, the men I had seen in the video might as well have put me in the square and flogged me. But the worst of all was the feeling of helplessness. Well, you know, they would put you in the square, and they would flog you. It's not just our speaker who is a sycophant to them, of course. It's also Hillary. Why isn't Hillary triggered by the abuse of people, especially by the abuse of women? We're going to play this video of how to beat your wife. You know, Hillary Clinton says she knows how to deal with men who get off of the reservation. The Saudis know how to deal with women who get off the reservation as well, don't they? Okay, if they get a little bit uppity, husbands, you need to put them back in their place. You need to show them who's boss. You may even need to beat them like a boss. That's what this video shows us, how to beat them like a boss. Okay, because if you don't discipline your wives, Saudi men, they have religious police, and they'll do that for you. They'll do it right on the street. They'll beat them right on the street. Or, as she was saying, they might as well have put me in the blocks and flogged me. Yeah, they'll do that as well. They'll do that as well. So let's play a little bit of this video, because it begins in a very pious manner. He comes out and he says, Allah's blessing upon you. Welcome to our show, which will deal with wife beating. This is incredible. This is national Saudi television. He says, I'm aware that this is a thorny issue. Yeah, it is a thorny issue. Now, we're going to go to the wife beating, but, you know, we want to get this in context, and I wanted you to see the beginning of that, because that's what this video was about. People are going to say, oh, you took this out of context. No, this is the video they put on national Saudi TV about how to beat your wife. Now, from this point, he goes to some more gradual issues, because, you know, we have to bring those women along gradually sometimes. You know, when you show them you're the boss, sometimes you got to do it a little bit cautiously at the beginning. And so he suggests a couple of things like alienation of affection. Get them out of the bed, or you leave the bed. Or maybe, he says, maybe you leave the house and you sleep somewhere else. Yeah, to teach her a lesson. Or maybe you sleep on the floor or have her sleep on the floor. But it's alienation of affection, which in the West would be grounds for divorce. But over there, it's just the beginning of discipline. Then from there, we go to how to actually do the beating. Let's pick it up from that. Goes, then comes the third stage, the issue of beating. And we have to understand that the aim here is to discipline, not to vent one's anger. You know, we're not angry about this. We just need to bring these women into line. So he says the necessary Islamic conditions have to be met. The beating should not be performed with a rod like this one. Yeah, don't hit them with a big stick, okay? Nor should it be with a headband, which some husbands use to beat their wife, or with a sharp object. Yeah, don't poke them with a sharp object or strike them with your sword. That could cause the head to come off. No, let's see how he proposes to do this. Okay, so here's how you do it. It should be done with something like the suwak, a tooth cleaning twig. Oh, it's not a flogging, it's a flossing. Okay, so here we go. It should be beaten with a suwak like this, or with a handkerchief, because the goal is merely to make the wife feel humiliated. Oh, no, wrong, that she disobeyed her husband. Okay, look, do you want to live in a country that is conducted like this? I guess we should just open up our borders and allow the Wahhabists to come into our borders unchecked. Because, you know, that's in the Constitution according to Paul Rhino. We just have to have open borders and immigration. That's the Constitution according to Rhino.